Hello, you are listening to the All Girls School podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Barrett, a graduate from an all-women's college in Virginia. This podcast aims to highlight the diverse experiences and life journeys of graduates from all-women's colleges. Listeners can expect to hear candid conversations about a wide variety of topics. This podcast strives to be in an inclusive space, so some guests may identify themselves as non-binary or trans. I hope you're ready, because class is about to start. Hi, this is your host, Victoria Barrett. Just wanted to let you know before we jump into the episode that at the very beginning of this episode, we do have some audio difficulties. There's a bit of a delay, and it might cause myself and my guests to kind of talk over each other a little bit at first, but as the recording goes on, it seems to buff out. So as you're listening to the episode at the very beginning of it, just keep in mind that there is a bit of a delay and the sound does go a little bit in and out. I hope you enjoyed the episode. All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of the All Girls School podcast, where I interview someone who has attended and or graduated from an all-women's college. I'm your host, Victoria Barrett. I use she, her pronouns. And this week, I have another alum from Mary Baldwin. Surprise, surprise. She graduated a year ahead of me and commissioned into the United States Air Force, where she served on active duty for 8.5 years. She ETS'd in December of 2020 from the Air Force and is living her best life as a civilian. I'm excited to introduce Brittany Bullard. Welcome to the podcast. And first of all, thank you for joining me all the way from Bali.
Wow, so cool. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'm like super excited to reconnect with you and hear about everything that's going on with you right now. But I do kind of want to like go back in time a little bit first before we do that and kind of revisit like the high school version of Brittany. And what were you like in high school? What were some of your interests and your goals prior to going to college?
Yeah. For me, that's a really big place. Who was I in high school? What was I like? I had zero direction. And I think that my parent mother in particular and was really worried. In high school, though, I got into track at one point. And so track and field was really for me. I built a sense of understanding what it meant to have structure in place. But aside from that, I was really aloof in classes. I listening and I really kind of lived in my own little dream world. I loved listening to music at home and being out in nature. And to me, school was like a really difficult experience in that I had a really tough time and being fully present. I had no goals, basically.
Wow. That to me is kind of just surprising from like the version of you like in college that I knew.
Yeah, I think college definitely brought out a different side of me. It was a real big opportunity for me to step through and to, to change things for myself. But it was a brutal awakening. I needed it.
That's so cool. Yeah, I would have never guessed. That is like so interesting to me. So how then did you end up at Mary Baldwin?
So my true story of how I ended up at Mary Baldwin. So as I told you, I was this schooler with and didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. And my dad, some of you might know, but my dad is so here's a West Pointer. with a daughter who doesn't know what she wants in life, you know? Can you imagine? And so it was high school graduation, and my dad looked at me and he was like, what are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think I'm gonna like go to community college maybe and like pick up some classes and figure it out." And he looked at me and he was like, "No, we're gonna go to Zeke." And so for those of you who know, my roomie of all 4 years at Mary Baldwin, Jane Chadwell, she and I were friends since we knew each other since elementary. And so, I knew that she was going to Mary Baldwin and that she had kind of, like, done this overnight program, women's college with a military program, and I thought, "Okay, if I really wanna get my dad off my back, I'll just tell him, like, 'Sure, let's go check out this school.'" And so we did, and Larry Baldwin fashion, they had, like, a full board meeting, like, where we showed up and my name was on the board, and it was like, "Brittany, welcome," and they're like, "You're accepted." And I kind of looked at my dad and I was like, "Oh, it's happening." And that's how I ended up at Mary Baldwin. Yeah, I was basically just like, "Yeah, I wanna make my dad happy, got a school. I know Jane Chadwell's going to this school, so let's try it."
That's awesome. I knew, like, you and Jane were, like, friends, but I didn't realize, like, since elementary school. That's a long time.
Yeah, we weren't like we knew of each other, right? Since
Mhm.
elementary school, we'd been in the same, like, schools, ever since. And then in middle school is when we started to, like, build our friendship, I would say, and then high school, we really like, senior year, we really became close. Yeah.
Do y'all by chance have, like, a nickname? I'm just curious because obviously me and Harrison created our own nickname, so I just do y'all have a nickname by chance?
No, we don't. That's really cute. I love that. But you know what? And Jane would, like, maybe approve of this, I feel. Jane would never have a nickname. It is not her thing. Like, Jane doesn't even do hugs. Like, would she do a nickname? No, no. But, like, tell me if I'm wrong, Jane, like, for sure, but, like, no. We're not there.
I'm actually interviewing her next week, so I'll definitely ask her.
Ask her.
I
I'm so
will.
curious what she says.
Yes, I'm gonna ask her. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Okay. So Jane was, like, the one with the plan to go to Mary Baldwin, like, initially, and you kind of just, like, tacked on to it. Like, yeah, like, I'm excited to see now, like,
Yeah.
when I interview Jane, like, how Jane stumbled upon Mary Baldwin.
Yeah, yeah, hers is a cool story, and I'm curious how she'll tell it. Yeah, that's a fun.
Ooh, now I'm excited. Um, yeah, so I guess, like, this probably answers the next question, like, you did you ever expect to, like, be in a all women's college?
No. I This is the other thing about it too. I was this little tomboy girl. So, like, all my
Mhm.
friends were boys for the longest time when I was young. Our neighbor, growing up, there were these 2 boys, and, like, we'd literally play in the woods and build Legos together, and, I, like, cut off my Barbie's hair to be like their GI Joes. Um Yeah, I would, like, play basketball with the boys. I didn't really play basketball, but I just, like, liked, I think, the simplicity that boys at that age were.
Mhm.
Um, so for me to be at an all-women's college, to find myself there was just shock. Yeah, I was pretty surprised. It was
Yeah.
not in my plan.
Yeah, I kind of resonate with that to where, like, I very much especially when I was younger, I, like, only played with, like, the boys, like and maybe that's because I was into sports and stuff like that, but yeah, definitely kinda on the same page with that. But as I got older, I noticed I enjoyed, like,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, the company of, like, being around women and, like, playing sports, like, being on sports teams, like, eventually I had to play, like, on sports teams that were all girls, right? But, yeah.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, I think when you're younger, influences are less supposed to have a delay.
oh, I think we do.
But I was just gonna say, yeah, I like yeah, when younger and the differences are less, uh, it's really easy to like find a lot of like friendship within both sexes. And yeah, there reaches a point in time where you just go, oh wow, like it's nice to be around women who can understand what this experience is like because we have our unique set of experiences. So yeah, totally resonate with that shift in time of like where we went from playing with the boys to like
Mhm.
realizing how nice it is to have women around us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you make a good point. Like, I think once you like hit puberty and stuff, obviously, like, there's those different gender roles and expectations from society. So our experiences do kind of go in different ways. And so it is nice having that community with women because they do understand that experience.
Yeah, yeah. Total unspoken, like under, yeah.
Mhm. So once you got to Mary Baldwin, how did it go? What was your experience like?
Oh man. Um, so many things, so many things. I mean, first thing that comes to mind is just being in so the first thing I guess we did go to wilderness. What is it called? Uh
Yeah. I
what did we call that?
I think it was called Wilderness. I don't know.
What did I think it was
Yeah.
called wilderness
Yeah, I think that's what it was called, to be honest. Very
or
literal.
something. It was literally in the wilderness. You know, you guys kind of go from this like kumbaya. I was like, this is cool. This is great. This is fun. Like, I, I mean, I missed showering, I think by
Mhm.
the seventh day, but it was a really fun time. And then you get off the buses and everything changes, right? When you arrive back at Mary Baldwin. And I just remember having this OPI nail polish, I think called Mod About You. It was my favorite OPI color.
So funny. Uh-oh.
And and here I am, and I'm thinking nothing of it. Like, this is like muted tone. This is appropriate. And I just remember the first day, Sergeant Harrington drilling into me. And from that day on, I was known as Barbie. So
Oh.
yeah, how was like yeah, like stages and layers and levels to it. But that was like the first shock of like, oh, what did I get myself? um, and then yeah, I think that we could go many directions with that than question how was that experience? It was amazing. I mean, it changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, there's that initial shock and I completely get what you're talking about, where, like, they're very nice to us, like, when they're recruiting us and, like, before everything starts, like, the orientation days, wilderness, yeah, is very much about, like, let's bond, get you to bond as a class, like, your wilderness cadre are very nice to you, like, building rapport. But then, yeah, it's like, soon as you get back, it's like everything's different, and it's like the mood changes, like, real quick, like, very quick. Um,
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Oh, cadre week is" yeah. Yeah. It's like, "Oh, okay, now we're in the military program. This is it."
Yep.
Who
Stuff gets real.
who was, like, the most intimidating? I know you mentioned, like, Sergeant Harrington. Like, was there anyone else that kinda, like, stood out as just, like, someone who just was, like, really intimidating cadre-wise?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone. But yeah, specifically, I do remember Sergeant Harrington, remember Sergeant Figueroa, remember Sergeant Bailey too.
Mm,
What was
yeah.
cool about Sergeant Bailey, if I remember correctly, you'd see moments of her, like, break through, and, I kind of always was like that. Um, yeah, but all of them, all
Yeah. I feel like, especially, like, once we become cadre, it's almost like a mask. It's like you can be, like, happy and then you can go, like, just turn it on. Like, it's kinda wild when we do that.
ah, and I'm curious now actually to ask you because we were a year different. It's intimidating for you then.
Um, honestly, I feel like we weren't very intimidated by the juniors or seniors. It was all your class. Like, I think your class did, like, a really good job, and there are just so many of you. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think, honestly,
Yeah, that's right.
I was in 4th platoon, and I'm gonna bring this up to Jane, but, like, Jane, like, did a really good job of, like, turning it on for Cadre Week. Like, all of the
Mhm.
corporals in 4th platoon, like, they were legit, like, they were intimidating for sure. Um, and yeah, I also really sucked at, like, learning drill and ceremony. Like, I didn't do JROTC or anything like a lot of other people had, and so I really struggled. I'm not coordinated. So, like, I was, like, the problem, like, project child for 4th platoon. Like, I was always the one getting pulled off to the side for extra instruction, and that's when, like, they kinda had to, like, stop being intimidating because I think I couldn't learn very well in that environment.
Wow, I never knew this. I had no idea. I had no idea that was your experience.
Yeah, I really struggled with, like, picking up, like, drill and ceremony.
Mhm.
Like, it was a struggle for me, but, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, interesting.
I think all I yeah, your whole class was intimidating for sure. Um, but I think after we broke out, it was yeah, it was less intense. But your class in general, like, was kind of intense.
Yeah, I think we were. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good group.
But I I think, like, also our
Mhm.
classes ended up having, like, a really good, like, working relationship, especially, like, as we progressed through the Corps, which was nice.
Yeah, I really felt like a synergy between our classes, honestly. I think that we found a really beautiful relationship. I remember that really well. Just that feeling.
And I
Especially
think
felt it with you and I.
I think we had a really good working relationship, and I don't know if you noticed the, picture that I have, like, one of the first posts that I have on the podcast, if you scroll through, is me and you
We
from
did.
Junior Dads. It's, like, honestly one of my favorite photos. And Junior Dads, yeah, I was hoping we would kind of go down this route to talk about, like, the relationship between, like, our classes because, I don't know if your class knows how much, like, that meant to us, when
Hmm.
y'all stepped up to play those roles for our honor ceremony because we did get, put in, like, a really tough bind when, um, 2014 ended up not participating, and, uh, I remember coming to you and, like, laying out this scenario, and, like, your entire class was just, like, so generous and willing to help, which, like, I think means a lot because the way junior dads works, like that honor ceremony, typically, you know, the seniors get to like take a break. Like it's the juniors like doing it all, like leading everything with like the help of the sophomores and the nulls. So it meant a lot to us that y'all like didn't even think twice about stepping in to help us because of that. I mean, obviously, junior dads is like kind of like one of the quintessential events like at Mary Baldwin, and that honor ceremony is like a big deal for junior cadets.
Wow. I'm really just touched getting to this and how much also like need you to remind me what exactly happened that year.
The details are a little fuzzy. It's funny, I interviewed McFarlane like a couple of weeks ago and she was like, "How do you remember all these things?" And I was like, "I don't know. It just sticks. I don't know. I just like remember." So like the details are fuzzy, so I don't like want to like get all of them wrong. So, like, whoever's listening, especially if they are a
Uh,
member of the class of, 2014, like, this isn't like, if I get the details wrong, I'm sorry. Um, Obviously, it's been a long time. It's like water under the bridge. It's not a big deal, but, I think there was a miscommunication between, one of our class members, like, as a platoon leader for the honor ceremony with 2014 as far as, like, who was gonna, take what roles, and I don't know if they just failed on communicating with 2014 or if 2014 didn't communicate with them in time about, like, filling a sergeant's role, and so I think
mm,
I think yeah, I think Sanchez just had, like, a null end up taking that role or giving a role that, someone in 2014 would have wanted, for the honor ceremony, and, you know, 2014, I will give them, like, they are probably one of the most tight-knit, like, sister null groups, at least in the time that I was there that I can remember, and, they really stood by each other in their decisions, and because, like, some of them weren't in those specific positions for the honor ceremony, like the sergeant's positions or something of that nature, um, 2014, like, opted as a whole class not to participate in our, um, junior dad's honor ceremony, and, I mean, we were a very small class, so it's not like we could move people around to cover down on that, and, like, training the sergeant's positions would have been difficult, with, like, filling it in with all, like,
mm,
nulls. So, yeah, I when that happened, I remember, um yeah, I remember, like, going and asking you and your class if, y'all would be willing to help us out, and, I mean and y'all did, and I think it was honestly, like, really fun, and it honestly made that ceremony almost more special in a way.
mm. To comment on your point of it made it special, that moment. Yeah, I'm just getting to reflect upon that and like how you lived that and it still sits with you today. And I'm really just in gratitude. Um, yeah, it's a really special, I feel like, between our two classes. And I feel like every single person walked a really beautiful line of whole, a respectability with one another and a prof- I want to say professionality, but a professional nature.
Yeah.
And, but all just like cared about each other. I think we just really saw each other. So walked this really balanced line, it felt. It's really cool to get to continue that today, you today,
Yeah. I
and still feel that. I really still feel that with you.
Yeah. I definitely feel that, and, like, that's one of the reasons I was so excited, for this interview. Like, I feel like some of the most exciting ones are with, like, members of your class just because, like you said, we did have, like, that a stronger relationship, like, working relationship, professional relationship, like, there's that supportive energy. Like, I really care about how each and every one of you are doing, and I feel like that's vice versa, like, that that your class also genuinely cares about how we're doing, and we're constantly, like, cheering each other on, especially now as, like, we're adults and we've embarked on, like, our journeys wherever they've taken us.
Mm, 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 mm. I want to take, because we're on the topic, but I want to like brag on you a little bit. The the sheet for today for the episode. Yeah, it's like a sheet basically. So it says like the time and like
Mhm.
location, like has all the yeah. And I'm opening it and reading it, and I just was like, this is like one of the reasons I love this person so much. It just like brought me right back to those days of like mornings and having this checklist, handy from you, opening up the rifle, who you are, how you carry yourself, this that you create by um, organized and detailed and concise and precise. I think I was saying that to you too as we were leading up to today. I'm just so appreciative. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a really cool time in my life. And I think it was because you and I bounced really well energy off of one another. You had everything that I lacked. I didn't have those checklists and that way of like looking at things so precisely. I think I saw things more big picture and I saw, okay, well, this is going to create this impact and so is going to feel this way if we do this. And I think I saw this like overarching way of approaching the core. And you saw like the details of, okay, well, we've got to do this in order to get there. And I really saw us too working hand in hand. And that was a really beautiful period for many reasons. And that being one of them. I really loved what we were creating together.
yeah. I think we had, like, a really great, like, working relationship from, like, the beginning. Like, as soon as I found out, like, I was gonna be sergeant major and you were gonna be first captain, and I totally agree about how, like, we balanced each other. Um, I am definitely a perfectionist and definitely, like, have those checklists and try to be organized, but it's nice because I don't have, like, that bigger picture sometimes, like, that overall arching vision, um, and so it's nice to have that balance, and I think it's just kinda like the nature of our positions too, like, you were first captain, like, you're the face of the corps, you're, like, driving the core for that year and what we're doing, and you're concerned about everyone and everything with the core, and I'm, like, the sergeant major, so, like, it's about that precision too, like, making, like, all the little steps of, like, drill and ceremony, like, the execution, the operations piece of it. So, yeah, I think we just had, like, such a great working relationship, and I think that's why, it was just so easy, especially when those things happened for, like, junior dads that, like, it was just kind of like a no-brainer, um, when y'all stepped up, and that was very nice.
Just want to reach across the screen with you.
I know, I was like, that's the bad part about virtual. It's like, I love that, like, we get to connect virtually, but also I so, like, enjoy, like, the in-person interviews because I feel like it would be so cool to, like, interview in person and yeah, but, you know, I'll take what I can get, you know? This is awesome.
Hey, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so let's see. Uh, so speaking of you being first captain, how like, how did you end up deciding to go that route? Like, kind of like we talked about, it seemed like your null year, your freshman year, you may have not have envisioned yourself like with that interaction with like Sergeant Harrington, with the nail polish, like getting the nickname Barbie. Like, would anyone have had expected you like your senior year to be first captain?
I can't speak for everybody, but I would say that no one probably expected it, my included, at all, at all. Um, yeah, I, I just remember like this moment, and it was complex, at the time because really the person who was clearly going to be first captain was McFarland. I mean, it was just so clear. Like she was to be our class captain from day one. I mean, the dedication of this woman. I mean, the she's amazing. Like, need I say more? It was the clear path ahead. And in my eyes too. And I really just remember one day kind of like probably sitting in my dorm room going, oh, I don't know if you've ever had these moments in life where like you just kind of realize, oh shit, I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to go for that. Like it doesn't matter if I get it. And for those who like might not know what our process is like in the Corps Cadets, each year you go before a board for promotion, and in that board you speak your druthers. So the top three positions of what you'd like to be in the Corps and why. So it's a process that requires you to think, right? You to really think before you meet board. What do I and not do I what do I want out of an egoistic place? Though I'm sure possible, right? We could all go there and might have been there at certain points, but like really, like ask yourself, what do I do? What do I go for this next year? Who am I? What have I learned? It's a true assessment of one's growth in the core. So I feel like that's important to understand for those who are unfamiliar. So it was very, and the board. And in preparation for that, I just was getting this feeling in my body that I couldn't ignore. And I was like, oh man, I'm supposed to go for captain. And I was like, man, but I can't do that to McFarland, And I really was in this turn. I was in a real big internal conflict of do do I silence this voice inside me so that I can appease my classmates and a person who I respect so greatly? I actually get emotional thinking about it. So it was a big turning point for me. It was a big, like, young girl who didn't know what she wanted to suddenly feel, oh, I think I'm supposed to do this. So I had this choice, do I make my class happy and not stir up um in what's meant to be clearly, or do I just give a shot and listen to that voice? And I did. And ultimately, it led me to being first captain. And I remember the announcement came out. And for as close as Jane are, we lived together, um, which like is a whole episode in of it. She had no idea that I had applied to be first captain. So I remember there was a conversation where she looked at me and she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" Oh, and I didn't tell anybody because I actually don't know if I really thought I was going to get it. I just knew I had to listen to the voice. But I didn't tell anyone. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that. But I definitely understand what you're saying. Like when you have that voice that's just you feel it and it's telling you something. And And I feel like we do have to listen to it because that voice is talking to us for a reason. And I know sometimes it sounds cliche, but like we, we have all these choices that we weigh, and like they do ultimately lead us down these paths. And I truly believe, like, at least every time I've listened to that voice and followed down that path, like, it's because it was meant to be that way. So you listening to that voice of telling you, to go for it was because that's what you were meant to do. And, that's just your gut was, you know, telling you to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And my life, could have different had I not. And that was such a disservice to me and my journey and my growth. And, you know, you might have talked about this with McFarland and she can correct this too if it's incorrect. But from what it ended up being perfect that I became first captain because she actually had um at the time a year ahead of her where she had to focus on something really important in her life. And I'll spare the details, but like it actually ended up so harmoniously because for her, she was actually being called in another direction than at her with its own set of needs that year. She wasn't actually able to commit to the role in the way that she had hoped. Mhm. So it was really interesting to watch them do and go, wow. I guess you really do. You just have to listen though. If it even makes sense, even if it's not rational, um, we have to explore those callings.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you never know what can happen. So, yeah, I think that's awesome that you listened to it and that you pursued it. And hopefully, that's something that you continue to do in life. And like anyone who's listening, if they have like that feeling too, of like they feel like they're being called to just trust trust their instincts and to kind of just follow it.
Yeah, yeah. Trust it, and I feel like you're so right. If anyone's listening, you're building trust with yourself by trusting it, right? That's the crazy thing I find is you're actually building a deeper trust within yourself. Oh, I can trust that the next time this feeling comes, I can listen to it. Yeah,
All right. Well, I kind of want to shift a little bit away from B will and more onto like um Air Force ROTC. Cause so you did Air Force
yeah,
ROTC, and then you commissioned into the Air Force. So what made you
yeah.
want to join Air Force ROTC once you got into college?
Okay, people are probably up on this theme of me at this point. That Brittany has never had a plan. Um, I was an Army ROTC because that was uh what I knew. My dad was a West Pointer. Need I say more? And Jane was an Army ROTC. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I reached a point where I was just like, "Man, this is just not the vibe for me." I remember coming back from an FTX and, I'm like all about being in nature. Like I'm cool. Like I'm like a tomboy, but like I felt so out of my element at that FTX. And I was like, this is not. And someone said to me, I was dating a guy at the time actually. And he goes, well, why don't you just switch to Air Force? And it was like this light bulb, like bing. And so I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I switched to Air Force. I don't have to do any of this. So yeah, I made the switch sophomore year and it was right as um let's see. It was right as the sophomores for Air Force were going into their training for whatever our training is called in the Air Force. you go for a month um, in the summer between your sophomore and your junior year. And it's a highly competitive, selective period. And I didn't know this. I just entered it, right? Going, sure, I just want to get out of this Army thing, like put me in the Air Force. And here I am in this selective process to determine whether I am equipped to go to training that summer. And so that's where the trajectory of Air Force begins. And spoiler alert, I got in and I ended up going to training that summer in Alabama.
Man, Alabama.
Yeah, it was Alabama I think I had one of the later trainings. It was like July period. So it was like procky. Um, I remember getting back home after like a month of being out in just like literal swamp, like, and you're carrying a camelback most of the time you're there. It's like your second skin, this camelback. And I just remember having these lines on my back that like were with this camelback of just like, I had like broken out my whole body. It was just like so gross, so gross.
Oh no.
But yeah, it was such an experience. But I actually had an amazing time. I really did. Yeah. I think that was like where I started to really see a lot more about myself. VWIL was an initial shocker that first year. And then this was like building upon that and showing me what greater potentiality lied within me if I really stepped outside of my comfort zones and really disconnected from everything that I knew. So yeah, that began my Air Force trajectory. Because from there, you start to go down the career path at that point of uh, what will I get assigned and uh, will I get assigned. And so I think that answered the question, right? We were going down the Air Force path.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that answers it. And if I remember correctly, I am trying to see if my memory is as good as McFarland says. Was your major international economics?
Dang, you're good. Yeah. It was international economics and business. And you want to know how I landed that major? How do you know this story?
Mm-mm.
I literally went, I don't know what I want to major in. I don't know what I want to do. So I opened up the course booklet. I closed my eyes. I flipped through the pages. I took my finger. I went like this and I went, international economics and business. Sounds cool. That's my major.
Oh my goodness. That's so
So yeah,
wild.
that was my major. I'm super impressed you remembered. Because I often forget. But yeah, that was it. That was totally it.
Yeah, because I was an international relations major, so it was very, like, close, and I think I remember I had to take, like, an economics class or whatever, and you were in, like, a higher level one, at the time, so, yeah, I think that's why it stuck. Honestly, I couldn't tell you how I remember this stuff, but I do.
It's so cool. And then so you were in international relations, which Jane was too.
Yes.
Jane was like double, triple major or something like this, but Jane was also international. So you probably segued a lot of classes
Mhm.
too. Did you have a lot of classes together?
We had, like, some segue, but we definitely if we weren't in the same classes, we both, like, would talk about Dr. Bowen, one of the he was, like, one of the main
Yeah.
instructors. I remember us, like, chatting about Dr. Bowen a lot. He was a very, like, quirky probably the quirkiest professor I've ever had. Like, his personality was just, like, so interesting. Like, I there's no one like him.
Mhm. Those are the ones that stick with me. Like, I don't know about
Mhm.
you, but those are the ones that really stick, right? The ones that
Yeah.
are quirky. I love a quirky professor.
Yeah. No, he was, like,
I remember
super quirky.
I remember we had this one teacher from India who taught algebra for 1 year, and I'm terrible at math. And I think this was like a third iteration of algebra. And all of a sudden I just got it. Like I just totally understood it. And it was because he was super quirky. He had this cool accent. And I was just like totally entranced. And I was like, I am here. I am here to learn. But yeah, I really have such a respect for teachers who are able to bring their personality to the room and then use that
Mm,
for the betterment of everybody else. Yeah, they don't hide who they are. They just are who they are.
yeah.
Super
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I remember hearing about Dr. Bowen a lot.
Yeah. He was quite a character. Like, just
Mm.
yeah, it's kinda, like, hard to describe him. But so, um, you end up commissioning in the Air Force. What was it like after you commissioned? What was your role? Like, what kinda jobs did you do, once you commissioned?
Yeah, that's like a whole story in and of itself, but, like, to, like, chop it down, I ended up going active duty, a couple months after graduation and, was first sent to intel school. So, my assignment was I was gonna be an intel officer with let's see, they called it operational experience. So, I was being sent to intel school to become an acquisitions officer 4 years later with a background in intel. Oh. So off I went to, um, Texas for training. It was a 9-month training, and, I made it 8 months, and I failed out of the training at 8 months. I think we were, like, a couple weeks to graduation, so I actually already had my follow-on assignment, and I was to be stationed in Nevada. And, yeah, I can when you can, like, reflect upon something and be like, "Oh, yeah, like, that's worked out the way it was supposed to." Um, at the time, the failure was really, shocking, and it was really difficult for me to accept. Just it was embarrassing, and it actually put my career on the line. Now I'm remembering too. So, not only was it, "Oh, like, you failed, like, we're gonna go send you back to acquisitions." It was, "Oh, you failed, and we don't know if we're gonna send you to acquisitions. We actually don't know if we want you in the Air Force anymore." So it was this huge, like, turning point where I was like, "Whoa, I haven't even, like, really begun my career. I just graduated, and, like, now this all might be over." So I was facing a lot of internal dilemma again. Um, but yeah, I ended up staying in. General Bissell actually wrote a letter of recommendation. I needed letters of recommendation. General Bissell wrote a letter for me and gave me some really sage advice, the way he does on a few phone calls. And yeah, then off I went to Los Angeles. And so my career that I got, I guess, nearly 8 years in. By the time I got to Los Angeles, 8 years in acquisitions, specifically to do with space at the Space and Missile Systems Center. And from there, in Space Force. So my career was in the Air Force slash Space Force in Los Angeles. And that was what my experience then became. And from there, Uh, it was really cool, actually, now that I look back and see every single year I was pretty much changing jobs, changing projects. If you look at, like, my history, I think every 1.5 to 2 years at least, I was switching to a new project, a new program. And I couldn't really understand that at the time, but it really gave me this breadth and depth of the center and the missions, and it just gave me a lot of opportunity to interact with different people and see things from different perspectives. It was a really incredible time.
So you were able to spend all that time in the same location?
Yeah, that's a whole nother chapter we could go into, because that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Um, you should be moving locations. So you should, if you're on trajectory or on the normal path, every 3 years on average, right? 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
But I had a set of bizarre circumstances occur, and they kept me in LA.
Yeah. Well, I think what's cool about that, and like,
Yeah.
I understand why the military does what they do, like moving people around and from job to job, but that probably meant you were able to become like a master of like your craft, like within acquisitions. You probably were like a subject matter expert in that area where you were located.
Mm. I feel like I would be taking way too much credit, but thank you to say that I was a SME of any sort. But you know what I think I have to give myself credit to is that um, I really like people. Like, I really love people. I love connecting with people. And so it gave me time at the center to connect with everybody. I mean, I knew everyone there. I knew the people in legal, I knew the people in equal opportunity office, I knew the people at the gym front desk. I knew and so for me, I feel like what I've realized in life is like you really don't need to know everything. It, it helps if you know people and you know who to go to when you need something. And so whatever happened at the center, I knew who to call and I knew who could help me. And I really had beautiful friendships there. I really had beautiful people walk into my life who are still in my life, some of them. And yeah, it for 8 years. Um, yeah, definitely gave me that advantage in my job, and really grateful for that.
Do you remember when, Harrison and I, uh, met you for, like, breakfast at like, in Venice? Like, Venice Beach area?
Whoa, I totally forgot about this. Yeah, I know exactly where we went now. Okay, tell me more. What else do you
Yeah.
remember?
It's actually kind of funny. I mean, I feel bad, but, like, so me and Harrison were late 'cause, um, when we were there, Harrison did do most of the driving. I don't driving in California stresses me out. I feel like now that I live in Northern Virginia, like, I've gotten better with, like, stressful like, being in a more crowded area and driving, but, um, Harrison made me drive to that morning, and so finding parking was wild. We were late because it took us forever to find
That's
a
right,
parking
okay.
space, and then, like, the wildest thing is you ended up getting a parking ticket, like, because you were parked right across the street, and, yeah, you ended up like, the parking I remember we were, like, just chatting, eating our food, and then all of a sudden, like, you just, like, spot the person that's, like, coming around to give tickets, and you just, like, take off and, like, go talk to them. But it didn't work. You still got the parking ticket.
Okay, this is, like, the most LA thing that could have
Yeah.
happened first. And second, I had a clean parking ticket record. I was proud of that. I was so proud of that in LA. I was definitely not one of these people who was just like, "Ah, screw it, another ticket." Like, I was, like, clean. I read the signs, I knew
Yeah.
when and where. That's hilarious. I can now see myself totally being, like,
Yeah.
shooting off running, trying to track down that man.
Yeah.
I'm really
Y
sorry. I'm sorry I left you guys hanging there at lunch. Not cool.
oh, no, like, you were literally parked right across the street, so we were just watching you, like, beg this man not to give you the ticket. It was funny. Yeah. I mean, I felt bad because you had to pay money for the ticket, but the scenario looking back was kind of ironic because it took
It
Harrison and I
really
so
wasn't it
long.
really wasn't much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't about the money at all. It was just about the pure fact that, like, I had a
Yeah.
clean record. I did not want that parking ticket.
Yeah.
Really didn't want that parking ticket, and I remember exactly where we were now. We were eating at Flake, I think it's the name of it, on Rose, and across the street is my yoga studio too that I was
Mm.
always going to. So
Yeah.
I was like, "I know this street. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here every day.
I
Like,
remember yeah,
I
now
know
I
the
remember,
sign."
yeah. You were, like, very adamant about, like, "Why did I get this parking ticket?" Like, I'm familiar with this area. And so
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I just thought that was funny, like, I don't obviously, I know we probably talked about a lot of other things during our, like, breakfast, but, you know
That is all that stood out
yeah,
now. That is all that stood out.
yeah. Man.
Yeah.
But, so now, let's kind of catch up to where you are now. You have come off of active duty in the Air Force, and
Yeah.
can you share, like, what happened when you came off of active duty? Like, how you got to where you are located now and what you're doing now?
Yeah, yeah. I I left active duty and, it was during pandemic. So my original plans were kind of like out the window. And I just knew, okay, let me drive cross country, go visit family and kind of like feel out where I'll go. And I finally made it, 5 months later to post is and my sisters and there for like maybe a month. And a girlfriend called me up and I had lived in Los Angeles and met through yoga, our yoga student. And her company had sent her back to France during the pandemic. She's French, and so they back to France. And she was like, "Hey, I miss you." And for her, she'd always wanted to come to Bali. It was like her dream. She wanted to come and live here and find a home. And she goes, "I know you have no interest in coming to Bali," because I really had zero interest. She goes, "But would you do it for me? I miss you." And, a month later, I'm here and I basically never left. And she also never came.
Oh my
It's a crazy
gosh.
story. She had to cancel her ticket. Yeah, she had to cancel her ticket right before. And something in me, the voice said, "Go anyway." And I came and yeah, I've been here since. So it's going on its third year now.
That's so cool.
And yeah, it's been really a special time in my life. And it's been the culmination of many, many prayers and much, um, work and effort to get here, unbeknownst to me at many times. But but basically, a huge part of my life prior to coming here is when I was in California. I was really blessed to come across this way of tea, and basically, I met my tea teacher, a tea teacher out there, and I really in depth tea. And not just like any tea, but tea as a form of meditation, tea as a form of life. And uh, so when I arrived to Bali, I came with a backpack, and that backpack really just had a bunch of clothes in it that I was gonna actually give away to Goodwill. But I thought, oh, I'll just take these because I don't know what's gonna happen in my life. I don't know where I'm gonna go. I want to be as light as possible and not care about the things that I'm carrying, not have an attachment with the things that I'm carrying. So I came with a backpack And I left all my tea things going, I'm really curious about who I am without this though. Like this has been such a cornerstone of who I am for a few now. But who am I without this? And so I got to Bali, and with the being here, I start meeting people who are opening a tea house, and they've studied the same tradition, and they basically want me to start serving at the tea house. And I feel like that's probably what kept me here. Um, that was my original aspiration, was to get out to Taiwan and sit with my teacher, and get out to China and sit with the trees. But the universe had other plans, and so here I am in Bali. A tea house opened a month after I arrived, and that's where I spend most of my time now. They're home in my practice, or at the tea house serving there. So that kind of like is a huge pivot in our conversation. But
Yeah.
that's that's what brings me here and keeps me here.
That's wow. Like, you literally only went with a backpack. That is just so, like, wild and brave and, like, yeah, that's so like, I would have never guessed that, just, like, showing up with nothing but, like, a backpack and, like, just really trusting yourself and kind of, like, the process, and it's just wild how everything fell into place. Like, that seems like a theme of, like, just, like, answering that call, and somehow things, do just fall into place when, like, you, like, answer that voice and you take that leap.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a huge testament of exactly this to even myself, and growing just a deeper trust in the process, and really I feel giving full focus and attention to the moments that we're in, because who knows what's going to grow from them. And I would have never guessed, you know, coming from where I've come, right? This girl in high school, this daydreamer who knew nothing of what she wanted, who trusted an intuition to go to an all women's military college. The foundation that built, right? That built such a strong foundation for how to structure oneself and how to carry oneself in the world. And yeah, and then being in Los Angeles by the graces for way too many years, and how that exposed me to these teachings, and how the teachings are now in Bali and I get to share them. It's been an epic form of showing me to trust the unfolding, and that each of us has our own story that wants to
Mhm.
come through, and we're the only ones that get in the way of that story. And so if we can really get out of our way, we can really watch as our reality becomes the one that the little girls in us,
Yeah.
the little people in us dreamed of. So, yeah.
That's so cool. What is a day in your life like in Bali? Like, what is your typical routine like?
So yeah, my typical routine, I would say most days, well, the first thing is I wake up and I make the bed. And I mean, every day could be so different, but I meditate, um, and then clean the house. I sweep, and then I sit for tea. And then if I have like a commitment that day, then there's an alarm set for sure to make sure that I make that function. If I'm serving at the tea house, I set an alarm, but otherwise, yeah, I try not to set alarms, and I try to let my body kind of uh, tell me what it needs for that day,
Mhm.
and just tune in, and most of my days are here and meditating and studying. And I mean, anything's possible. So yeah, there's a number of things that also could happen. But I try to get out, as much as possible to into nature here, and But I feel like most of my days are this routine of sitting, of studying, of sitting with tea, and of finding greater ways to be in service.
That's very cool. I know I kind of asked you before this when we were like communicating on Instagram uh, about you getting into poetry. So I noticed like you have some poems kind of incorporated into like your captions for some of your photos. Like, when did you kind of start writing and um,
Hmm.
how important is that to you, like, on a daily basis just to, um, explore, like, your creativity?
Mm. Yeah. So I'm so curious for you and for listeners in general about this, but I feel like a lot of adulthood is just retracing the breadcrumbs to who we were as
Mhm.
kids. And so, like, the things that we find that light us up, we might one day realize, oh, yeah, I actually did that when I was 6 or when I was 7. Um, and it kind of is this indicator for me that it's like it's a true form of who you are, right? So tea actually was introduced to me when I was 7. I had a tea ceremony that was given to me at the time, and it's really a pivotal moment in my young self. So tea like was introduced to me then, and has been a part of me for longer than I realized. And poetry's the same. I wrote poetry in elementary school. I remember like getting like published in the school paper, But my mom, you know, being the incredible, compassionate and concerned parent that she is and was, um, I remember she read one of my pieces and she was like, "Are you okay? Like, do we need to go talk to somebody?" Like, and I remember that moment being like, "Oh, maybe this isn't okay." And I now realize my stuff was really deep for a child. At
Mhm.
the time, I didn't realize that, but I can now see why she would have been concerned. I probably would have been too. So poetry came back into my life when I was in California. I was living on the ocean at one point in time, and I felt like being that in tune with nature, like the rhythm of nature, how soothing that was for my being, my nervous system. It was allowing a lot to come through. So yeah, I've been writing ever since, and my process is interesting. I feel like I write in a couple ways. Like poetry wise, to be honest, there's no process that I'm aware of. It actually just comes. There's a moment where I'm like, oh, I got to sit. And the words just come. And there's even moments where a word comes and I go, what does that mean? And I literally highlight it if I'm writing on my phone and I Google, like, I do the Google, what is it called?
Mhm.
Uh, Dictionary,
Oh,
to be
yeah.
like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that's the perfect word. Of course. Yeah, cool, we're gonna use that word." So really, it's a cool process for me because I learn a lot in this process of writing, and it's not something I'm thinking of, it's something that's literally just pouring out of me. And tea, I notice, kind of aids in this for me. I don't need to sit with tea, but I notice that the tea aids in this process. And so a large part of tea for me is poetry and sharing my poetry with others. And then the other portion of my writing is like my journal entries, and where I'm really striving in that way to like get out everything that's just sitting in me and understand these human qualities to myself, this mind that wants to run in a bunch of different directions, and like getting it all out into paper. And from there, something might get inspired to write. So, a few forms of writing, two at least, that are strongly present in my life. I feel like one serving the other for sure, or both serving each other. But poetry is for me, it's a filter. I feel like our speech sometimes, at least mine, does such an injustice for what I want to express. And I feel like the world is so loud,
Mhm.
and especially now, we can get on our devices and hear anyone's opinion at any point in time. And for me, poetry is this way of like taking all those words, if they were like a liquid, and pouring them through a filter. And what you strain, what remains, that's poetry to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Can I actually I was looking through some of your poetry. I screenshotted one that I really liked. Can I read it to you?
Mm. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay. Um, how it feels to feel when outside this moment, nothing is truer. Breathing in and out, tending to truth, moving from feeling, replies from intuition, require no calculation, and add to a sum of what will be. To fall gently is to land on firm feet, letting the music course her veins, giving it all away. In truth, it's all a meditation. How do you love yourself when nobody is looking? And can it not be felt, the trace of your being, even that which no one is seeing, feeling, revealing all secrecy, feel, unravel yourself whole? I This one really stuck out to me. The part that stuck out to me the most was how do you love yourself when nobody is looking? And I feel like it stuck out to me because, this world, like you said, is so loud and it is so challenging. And I feel like we're just under so much pressure, right? Whether it's like work related relationships, friendships, like money, social media, like everything politically that's going on, like causes us so much stress. So, and it's like, how are you treating yourself? Like when no one's looking, are you saying that you take care of yourself, but at the end of the day, you're not, you're still like neglecting yourself? Or are you truly like putting in that effort to grow and like find things that give you purpose and peace and meaning?
Wow. It's really cool to hear somebody else read your poetry. That's a first for me. And to hear someone's insights from it and the reflection that that brings and the reminder that that brings that this is of importance. And in this line in particular, the importance that that carries and it coming through in this moment to remind me too. And thank you. Yeah. How do you love yourself when no one is looking? And that translates. It translates in an unspoken way. You can feel that with people. You can feel the people who are loving themselves, and you can feel the people who are lacking a little bit of that love. But yeah, it's a signature that leaves a silent trace. And can we love ourselves whole? That's the journey. That's a huge part of it, I feel.
Yeah. So I I honestly I love like all of this like transformation. Like I said, kind of like how I knew you like in college, I like really admire this um transition that you've had, and like it's very inspiring to see you embrace all these creative sides to yourself because like you said, you know, creativity is something I feel like especially our generation, like growing up, we were kind of told to push the creative things like to the side or push them down because um for us it was all about like you need to go to college, you need to, become a doctor, a lawyer, like these traditional things. And so we kind of stifled like our creativity. Like I remember in middle school, I wanted to be in band, and my dad was like, no, you need to take like typing classes and technology and things like that. And I was just like so bummed that I, couldn't find those ways to embrace like that creativity. But I think kind of this podcast has been an outlet for me to find those creative outlets.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, what would you have played in band, do you think, if you had been in band? Or what would you have gravitated toward?
Percussion. uh
Okay. Specifically
Drum.
anything?
My uncle was a drummer, like in an actual like rock band, and I always thought that was so cool. So like, yeah, probably
Oh,
like maybe like snare or something like that. Yeah, I just thought the drums were really cool. So probably, yeah, like the snare or something. And then, if I had, maybe I
have
would
you
have
gotten
ended.
in there at some point?
No, I haven't. I it's like one of those things. I lack coordination. I probably, if I really wanted to like go down that path, I could, but I do love music. Like I'm obsessed with music. I love going to
Yeah.
concerts. Um, yeah, I really wish I could sing better. If I could sing better, yeah. I love singing, but it's not good for people's ears.
Okay, I'm curious. Is there like a song that you are like playing on repeat always, or that you're presently playing on repeat? Is there like a song in particular?
Um, it's funny because it's not necessarily a song singing wise that's on repeat, but like I am trying to like embrace because I Tesla gave me a hard time when we were in Providence for like she said that all my music is sad. Like which I do play a lot of sad girl music, so that is what it is. But lately, um there's this song by Paul Russell called like Lil Boo Thing, and it's like it's just so fun, and like I just like dancing to it in the kitchen in the morning when I'm like making my breakfast. So like honestly, that's the one that's been on repeat cuz like I just really enjoy it.
Okay, I'm gonna listen to that later. I'm really excited to
I'll
dance to
send
it
it to
too.
you. Yeah, it's just fun. Like
Okay, cool.
yeah, it just like makes you want to dance. And I'm not like a dancer, but like it just makes you want
We are all
to.
dancers. Yes, totally. We are all dancers.
Yeah, but it's a fun song, and so, yeah, that is the song that has been, like honestly, I could play it at any moment, and it's just yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I'm trying to lean into, like, some fun songs that bring me joy, um, and focus less on, like, the sad girl music, but, that's why I love Taylor Swift, and I'm sure me and Jane are gonna talk forever
Oh, yeah.
about Taylor Swift, like, her lyrics, like, I mean, a lot of them are sad girl lyrics, and that's, like, why she is so great.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's a time and place for everything,
Yeah,
right? And I feel like sad girl music, like, or sad music or melancholic music, it lets us feel, and, like, we
yeah,
live in a world that, like, doesn't want us to feel.
mhm.
And so, like, that permission, like, "Oh, I can be with this and I can feel this," that's powerful.
That that is a good point, because in my episode with, like, Jazz Roll, like, we talk about how my personality, I would have never guessed, like, Um, one of my letters is F for feeling. And so, like, when I was younger, I would have never admitted that I have feelings. Like, I always wanted to be tough and things like that. So that kind of brings up a good point of like maybe why, that kind of music resonates with me so much is because it gave me a safe place to have those feelings and feel those feelings without necessarily like sharing them with other people or talking to other people about it, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I feel like this is what I was mostly doing in high school, is I was sitting with my little Walkman in my bedroom, listening to the latest, like, Ashanti or J-Lo and being like, I feel this.
Yeah.
And that was like, I get it. I get it. You're
Yeah.
speaking with a kindred spirit. 100%. And have you seen these videos too, which are really cool? If you like Google on YouTube, I don't know what to Google exactly, but it's basically music is being played and it's synced up to this like drum of sort. And the drum has sand poured on it. And I think you can do this with water droplets as well. And when music is played uh, on this drum with this droplets or sand on it, it structures it to create a shape. It's so cool.
That
It's
is cool.
mesmerizing. So as the music is playing, you're watching different shapes, geometric shapes take form. And what it's showing to us is that music has a structured geometric effect, right? On matter.
Mhm.
And, you know, our bodies, if we want to use the water example, because they do this with water droplets too, being composed of mostly water, we can then infer that the sounds that we're taking in are having a similar geometric effect on the cells and the water in our body. And we could go on and on down that rabbit hole of what could be occurring. But I think the important takeaway for me on that is like, there's something deeply happening when one listens to music
Mhm.
much deeper than one can really understand or tangibly uh, accept. So I feel like music is a huge part of life and our being and how we get to move through things. So yeah, I'm all about creating a playlist is a love language. Like, right? Remember the days where we
It
used to like burn
is.
CDs for each other? Like creating a playlist is a whole love language. And
Mhm.
that's a rabbit hole I could go down forever too.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge proponent of music and lately in tea, or I shouldn't say lately, like in general with tea, like it's setting the whole moment for that ceremony. Like, what music am I going to select? What mood it is wanting to be evoked? Because we're drinking, essentially water with tea leaves. So the effect of this music is going to have even greater impact, perhaps, and be felt. But also, just selecting the right music in general is important. Like, that's why we have DJs in this world that are so popular. But yeah, music is such a tool. It's such a vehicle for our evolution along this experience in life. So I'm really glad that you're going to get to go deeper on this with Jane in the next episode.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about Taylor Swift. Like, I could have interviewed her before. Like, she saw Taylor Swift, but I was like, no, like, I can't interview her until after she went to the
Oh,
Eras
good
tour.
point. I didn't
Yeah.
think you actually thought about that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited to have that conversation with her. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Oh, totally. I'm
Yeah.
stoked for it too. All right.
Well, I guess, we're kind of at the point to where we have been recording for a while. So as much as it like
Yeah.
pains me to like kind of go into this last part, which is kind of like the plugs piece. So, like at the end of each episode, I always ask whoever I'm interviewing if there's anything they want to plug, like a social media page, or um, like it could be, um, I don't know why I'm blanking. it, uh, yeah, I don't know why I'm blanking. Yeah, it could be a social media page. It could just be a
A plug.
project,
It's a
or yeah,
plug.
yeah, it's a plug.
Yeah. I got you. Well, I do have like the first person I want to plug,
Yeah.
is my dad. So I talked to him yesterday
Oh.
and I told him that I was going to be doing this with you. And he was like, tell her I say hello. And if she needs anybody to interview, I'm there. So I'll plug him first. He says hello. And yeah, he was really stoked to hear that we were going to be doing this today. And he was really stoked to hear that you are doing this.
That's so
And
cool.
I was like, yeah, me too. So thank you for what you're putting out there. I'll plug the All Girls School podcast, And yeah, I think we all are like a culmination of events that happen to us, of the people that impact us, of the love and grace that we're shown. So I am nothing but a culmination of people who have devoted themselves in some way at some point in time to me. Um and today is my mom's birthday too, which I think has me in my feels a little bit more also
Oh,
today in Bali. But yeah, my true plugs, I guess, then were my parents in the beginning. But but uh if you guys are interested in tea at all, in this way of tea, come to Bali and visit me first, and let's sit and have tea. But secondly, if you want to learn more, my teacher is under the Instagram handle of Global Tea Hut. So he personally doesn't get on here, but his way and his teaching can be found under Global Tea Hut out of Taiwan. So I want to make mention to that. And if you are in the States, uh, a dear friend following this way and who is, just an epic teacher in his own right, living tea. And he has a community out in Colorado, but also travels around US doing tea ceremonies, tea sit, uh, yeah, sharing the way. So Colin out of Living Tea. So I'll plug those two, Global Tea Hut and Living Tea. There's some cool peeps if you guys are interested in getting into tea at all or understanding more that path. But yeah, come visit me. Let's have tea. Let's hang.
hey. I mean, I already told the listeners in the first episode I like to travel, so don't tempt me with the like good travel option because I'll do it.
Hey, we're
You know?
here. I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
Hey, I mean, I'm serious. I might because I haven't had a trip in a while, so I'm in the market. I'm looking for what my next trip is gonna be. Thanks for listening to the All Girls School podcast. But before class is over, please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. If you enjoy video content, head over to our YouTube channel at All Girls School Podcast, where you can watch and listen to each episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at All Girls School Podcast, and you can email us questions, stories, and more at theallgirlsschoolpodcast@gmail.com. That's it for today. Class is dismissed.